Hi, my name is Mark, and this happened to me a few years ago during a business trip. I was staying in a mid-range hotel in a smaller city, nothing fancy, but it had good reviews online. I had a lot of work to do, so I didn't care much about the amenities or the view from the window. Little did I know, the lack of a view would be the least of my concerns. I checked in late in the evening and was given a room on the first floor. The hallway leading to my room was eerily quiet, and the dim lighting gave it a slightly unsettling vibe. When I entered my room, the first thing I noticed was that the window faced a brick wall, just a few feet away. There was no sunlight, no view, just bricks. I brushed it off, telling myself it didn't matter since I'd spend most of my time working. That night, as I was typing away on my laptop, I started to feel a strange heaviness in the room. It was subtle at first, like the air was thicker than usual. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just my imagination or fatigue from the long day. Around midnight, I heard what sounded like faint tapping on the wall behind me. I froze and turned around, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I convinced myself it was just the pipes or the building settling. But the tapping continued, sporadically. Sometimes it was faint, like a fingernail gently scratching the wall, and other times it was louder, almost like someone knocking. I tried to ignore it and went to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next morning, I mentioned the noise to the front desk. The clerk, an older man with a tired expression, gave me an odd look. He said, "No one's staying in the room next to yours. We'll check it out, though." I nodded and went about my day, feeling a bit uneasy but trying not to overthink it. That evening, I returned to the hotel and noticed that the door to the room next to mine was slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked inside. The room was completely empty, but something about it felt wrong. The air was cold, and there was an odd smell, like damp earth. I quickly stepped back and returned to my room, locking the door behind me. Later that night, the tapping started again, this time louder and more persistent. It was coming from the wall with the window. My heart raced as I realized the noise was coming from outside, on the other side of the brick wall. There was no way anyone could be out there at 2 in the morning. I mustered up the courage to pull back the curtains, and my stomach dropped. There were smudges on the outside of the glass, like handprints, but distorted and elongated. My blood ran cold as I stared at them, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Suddenly, the tapping turned into a loud bang, and I jumped back, my heart pounding. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. They sent up a security guard, but by the time he arrived, the noise had stopped, and the handprints were gone. He gave me a skeptical look and told me it was probably just a prank or my imagination. I didn't argue, I just wanted the night to be over. I barely slept and checked out first thing in the morning. To this day, I have no idea what I experienced in that room, but I've avoided staying in hotels with no windows since. My name is Rachel, and this happened during a family road trip when I was 16. We were driving cross-country and stopped at a budget motel for the night. It was one of those places with the doors facing the parking lot, and the kind of vibe that made you double-check the locks on the door. We checked in late, around 11 p.m., and were given a room at the far end of the building. It was small and dingy, but we were too tired to care. My parents took the bed closest to the door, and I got the one by the window. After showering and changing into pajamas, I crawled into bed and scrolled through my phone while my parents watched TV. Around midnight, I started hearing footsteps outside. They were slow and quiet, like someone pacing back and forth. At first, I thought it was just another guest heading to their room, but the footsteps didn't stop. They just kept going, back and forth, right outside our door. I whispered to my parents, asking if they heard it. My dad muted the TV and listened for a moment. "It's probably just someone walking to their car," he said. But the look on his face told me he wasn't entirely convinced. The pacing continued for another few minutes, and then it stopped. We all breathed a sigh of relief, thinking whoever it was had finally gone. But then, there was knocking at the door. It was loud, with multiple knocks, soft knocks. My mom tensed up, and my dad got up to check the peephole. "There's no one there," he said, his voice low. He opened the door slightly, just enough to peek outside, but the hallway was empty. He closed and locked the door again, and we all tried to convince ourselves it was just a prank. A few minutes later, the pacing started again, this time closer to our window. I pulled back the curtain just enough to see outside, and my heart nearly stopped. There was a man standing under the dim light of the parking lot, facing our room. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring. I couldn't make out his face, but something about the way he stood was deeply unsettling. I whispered to my dad, and he came over to look. By the time he got to the window, the man was gone. We decided to leave the lights on and stay up for the rest of the night, just in case. Around 3 a.m., we finally dozed off, too exhausted to stay awake. The next morning, as we were packing up to leave, my dad noticed something scratched into the paint on our door. It was a single word, "watching." We didn't report it to the motel staff. We just got in the car and left, thankful to put that place behind us. My name is Daniel, and I'm a traveling salesman. I've stayed in hundreds of hotels over the years, but this one experience stands out as the most terrifying. I was staying at a boutique hotel in a small town. It was one of those places that tried to feel upscale but didn't quite pull it off. I checked in late after a long day of meetings and went straight to my room. It was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a long hallway. I ordered room service, took a quick shower, and changed into something comfortable. About 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Assuming it was my food, I opened it without checking the peephole. But instead of a hotel staff member, there was a man standing there. He was tall, wearing a tattered hoodie, and his eyes were wild and bloodshot. Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't say anything, just stood there, staring at me. Then he said, "Hey Daniel, I know who you are, but you don't know who I am, and I have been following you for the past hour." I quickly shut the door and locked it since I had no idea who this guy was, and what also freaked me out was him holding something in his hand. I'm not sure what it was to say. My heart was racing was a bit of an understatement. I called the front desk and told them about the man. They assured me they'd send someone to check it out. A few minutes later, the phone in my room rang. It was the front desk clerk, telling me they couldn't find anyone matching the description. Feeling uneasy, I double-checked the locks and tried to get some sleep. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the doorknob rattling. Someone was trying to get in. Then what made my blood run cold was I heard the same voice saying in a mocking voice saying, "Daniel, I know you're in there." While also at the same time heard something scratching. I grabbed the phone and called the front desk again, but before they could answer, the rattling stopped and I heard footsteps walking away. The next morning, I checked out and told the manager about what had happened. He apologized profusely and offered me a free stay, but I declined. I never went back to that hotel, and to this day, I always use the peephole before opening the door. These stories serve as a chilling reminder to always trust your instincts and be cautious, especially when you're staying somewhere unfamiliar.